Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to Getting Started with ForeFlight. In this webinar, we're going to go over a lot of things that new users need to know. We'll give you an overview of the app today. We'll walk you through how to set up your first aircraft. We'll look at several key parts of the app that you'll use every time you'll plan a flight. And then we're going to walk through all the way to filing your first flight plan. Before we get into things today, I want to introduce our presenters, Alex and Archer. Guys, go ahead and tell us about yourselves.
Hey everybody, how's it going? My name's Alex McMillan. I'm a team lead here with the pilot support team here at ForeFlight, and been a CFI for just under 2 years and been with ForeFlight for about the same amount of time, and have just really enjoyed being a part of this application. Archer?
Hey everyone, my name is Archer Hasbany. I have been a software engineer here at ForeFlight for about 3.5 years, and about 2 years ago I got my PPL. So really excited to be with you guys here today and tell you some more about ForeFlight.
Yeah, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. Thank y'all for being here. My name is Jay Wiles. I produce all of our webinars here at ForeFlight. I'm a student pilot and I've been at ForeFlight since 2021. Before we look at today's agenda, I want to mention that we're going to be using a Pro Plus subscription plan for today's webinar. Now that's our middle subscription plan. We've got Basic Plus and then Pro Plus and Performance Plus. But we'll be on Pro Plus today, but almost all of the features that we use in today's webinar are available to customers at any subscription plan. We've just got a couple little things we want to show you that are available in Pro Plus. You can also follow along during today's webinar by looking for these red circles that we'll be using to demonstrate things. So as you see those, that's where we're tapping, so you can follow along. So onto our agenda for today, we're going to start by showing you how to navigate ForeFlight. Then we'll take a look at setting up your downloads to make sure that you have all the charts and data that you need for the regions that you typically fly in. After that, Alex and Archer are going to walk through setting up your aircraft. That includes setting up a performance profile to help you get more accurate time and route and fuel calculations. And then we're going to get into the planning of your first flight in ForeFlight using both the Maps and Flights tabs. And then we'll take you all the way to filing it. And then after filing, we're ready to fly. So we'll take a look at a few of the useful in-flight features and post-flight features of ForeFlight as well. And then I'll come back and briefly touch on many of the features that you can use if you've purchased a Pro or Performance subscription plan, because we want to make sure that you can see everything available to you, or as much as we can show in an hour. And then we'll share some of our favorite tips and tricks that are easy, useful, and that many people who've worked at ForeFlight for years may not even know, because there are just that many things in the app. And after that, we're going to wrap up with some Q&A. But before I hand it over to these guys, I want to just mention that you can ask questions during today's webinar by using the GoToWebinar message panel on the right side of your screen. We've got several people standing by to respond to you, and we'll respond one-on-one to as many people as we can. And then I'll take some of the more popular questions and ask them to Alex and Archer live here during the webinar and at the end. And I want to mention we usually do get a lot of questions during this webinar, so if you have a question, submit it as soon as you think of it. As we get toward the end of webinars, it's just more difficult to get to everyone. If your question isn't answered during today's webinar, though, you can always email us at team@foreflight.com, and Alex may be the one responding to you as part of our pilot support team. If you encounter any audio or other technical problems during today's webinar, go ahead and try leaving and rejoining the webinar. And if that doesn't work, try switching to a computer from a mobile device if you're able to. We tend to find that people on computers have fewer connection issues with the GoToWebinar platform. And lastly, today's presentation is being recorded and it'll be accessible at foreflight.com/webinars by this time tomorrow. So with that, let's go ahead and I'll hand things over to Alex.
All right. Thanks once again, folks, for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and put on my CFI cap real quick, and it's hard to take that off these days. And we all know that the golden rule of aviation is aviate, navigate, communicate. Today we're going a little out of order. We're going to start with the navigation of this app. So to start off, I want you to kind of divert your attention to the screen here, and along the bottom, notice all the different tabs that we have here. Now, these different tabs are going to show us different information, different features that we have available to us in the app, like the airports page, the maps page, maybe a weight and balance area where you can see all of your different plates and charts and things like that. I'm not going to go through every single one of these today. I recommend a little bit of homework on your own time, kind of do some navigating on your own and do some exploring of this app and see what all is available to you. Now, we don't have everything available down here on the bottom. It would just be not ergonomic at all and not very easy to use. So we put the rest of it in this More tab over here on the right. Now you can see in this More tab, we have quite a few more options, and we have the ability to edit the order in which these tabs are up there. Obviously, everybody flies a little differently. Everybody does everything a little differently. So they're also going to use ForeFlight a little differently. So depending on what they use most often, they might want to have the order just changed up a little bit. So if you go ahead and hit that edit tab order, you'll see at the top of the screen here that we have the right side of the screen here, we have all of our different features located on here in the order that they're currently shown on the bottom. Well, if you want to move something up, let's say you want to use a checklist very often in flight, and you want to be able to get to that quickly so you can, get to an emergency or what have you, go ahead and tap on this area right here, the 3 lines on the right, and go ahead and pull it up. And once you save that, you'll notice down here that my checklist has popped up in the third portion, or the third column. So this makes it a lot easier to access very quickly. One more thing I kind of want to briefly point out is if you look on the right side of your screen right now, if you're ever emailing us at team@foreflight.com with any questions, or maybe something is not working exactly the way that you believe it should, or you can't quite figure out how to make something work, we're going to need the email address that's associated with your account. So in order to find that, you'll want to go ahead and hit more, and then go ahead and hit on the account icon there. Now you'll see here your information. That's your email address, the name on your account. You'll see the device name. You'll also see your current subscription level here, and you'll have access to ForeFlight Labs, which can give you access at that point to certain other features that we're either currently working on or trying to implement. So check that out when you get a moment later. Today we're going to be using a Pro Plus subscription. I just wanted to highlight that. So we may have some features here available that you're not seeing on your own if you have a Basic Plus, or you might not see some stuff that we're currently showing if you have a Performance Plus. So just keep in mind we're using the middle tier, the Pro Plus subscription. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at downloads. I'll hand it off to Archer for that.
Awesome. So I'm going to take you through how to configure your download settings. So we'll start down on the bottom right with the More tab, and you'll see up at the top we have a Downloads tab. So I'll jump in there, and just off the bat you'll notice we have a couple sections here where you can configure the different downloads. So required downloads up at the top are things that are kind of critical for the app to work the way it does, and then as you scroll down you'll see some other options that you can choose to install or not, depending on how much space you have on your iPad or just what you like to fly with. So the first tab we'll jump into is the actual data settings up in the top left. And this is where you can configure just in general what kind of charts, high resolution base map and terrain that you want to download. So for me, I fly in Texas mainly, so I don't need too many of these other international charts downloaded. And I'm also a VFR pilot, so having the IFR doesn't benefit me too much. And if I did need them, I could always come in and turn them on. So that's how I have it configured. But if we go back here to the screen we were just on, something else you can configure is your actual region settings. So this, again, are all the different regions that you might fly in. So, we usually recommend to have the different states that you fly in frequently downloaded ahead of time. And if you had limited space on your iPad or you just didn't end up using them, you could always come in and toggle any of these on or off. And then these would be included in your automatic downloads every month. So that's all we really need to jump into there. Ooh, sorry about that. Let's see, is there anything else I want to touch on? Yeah, so I think that's everything in the downloads. If we go back here and go to more once again, the next thing I'll show you is our actual overall app settings. So if I click settings up in the top right, this brings us to the overall ForeFlight app settings, and this is a pretty long list of a million different things you can configure. But something you'll notice just across the top that are super useful is your app brightness, and this mirrors whatever you have your device set to. So if I were to go into the actual Apple settings and change my device brightness, that would be mirrored right here. But it's just nice to have while you're in the plane. Right under that, we have the overall app theme, and you'll see the 3 different options are light, dark, and system. Light, as you might expect, turns kind of all the user interface to a lighter, more bright theme. If that's what you prefer, that's where you can configure it. I have mine set to system. which basically just matches whatever your Apple bright or dark mode settings are. So for some people, this is, bright during the day, dark mode at night. For me, I just leave it on dark mode all the time because that's what I prefer. Right under that, you can go and configure your light or dark settings. There's some different options in there. The last thing I'll touch on in the settings, just because there are so many things, and it's really worth just going through on your own to kind of determine what you may want to configure. But I'll show you up at the top here, we have our filter box. And so this is a search bar that kind of works to like live update as you type things in. So you'll notice as I type in preferences, you'll see the list start to update. And so these are just some really useful overall app settings. So this is where you would go if you wanted to configure your alerts. So these are the different, in-flight alerts, any airspace and NOTAM alerts you might want to configure are in here. Right under that, you'll see your different units and times. So you can go in and actually configure each of your different units to what you prefer. A couple other things that are useful in here are your own ship colors, whether you want to show heliports or not, and then just a few other kind of more specific diagnostic settings that you might want to configure. So I think that's all we're going to show on settings for now. We're going to jump back over to Jay now.
Yeah, just got a quick question that I saw that just came in. I want to answer it really quick. Someone asked, how can I delete things I don't need anymore if I start running out of space? So the short answer is you can go into the download setting, and I just want to show you my iPad because I can run out of space really quickly. I've got all these regions selected. It's really easy to run out of space. So that's kind of the first step to do is just uncheck regions and countries even that you don't need. But Alex, I want to just put you on the spot here. Any other tips to save space on your device?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a really dire need at that point, Jay, if you want to hit back on that downloads button there, you can also scroll down and find the exact download that you have currently downloaded this time. Swipe from right to left, and you will see the delete button come up. You can go ahead and delete that directly from there if you already have that region unchecked, and then deleting the actual download itself. This will keep it from being re-downloaded, and it will immediately get rid of that download for you. One more little tip about this, we put out these new charts anytime, ICAO or whatever authority decides to put these charts out. We update them as soon as they come out. So in order to make sure that you have the most disk space possible, go ahead and hit delete at the upper right corner, and then delete expired. And this is going to make sure that any kind of holdover, any kind of charts that kind of, sorry about that, slip through the cracks, you're going to make sure that you've freed up that space at that point.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Go ahead and jump into what you were going to be talking about next.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll go ahead and take you through setting up an aircraft. Obviously a very important part of the equation, right? So I'll go ahead and tap on the aircraft icon here that's already been kind of pre-set up in my menu down at the bottom. And today I'm just going to make a 172. It's an aircraft that most of us are pretty comfortable with and understand pretty well. So once I hit the plus button here on that aircraft screen, I'll go ahead and start to put in tail number. I'll probably call it November. We'll call it November QWERTY. And we'd like to keep it fresh here. Once we're done with that, the next thing that we have to do is we have to enter what kind of aircraft type we have. So let's take a look at our different aircraft type. Now I'm making a 172, so I can just go ahead and search by typing in 172, and you're going to see a bunch of different options here. Now it's imperative that you choose the correct option for your aircraft, and I'll show you why here. So if I hit that search, we'd get rid of that. You might see the Aviones Columbia up here that has 172 and 172 RG. You might see this Cessna area that has all of these different configurations. But if you're like most of us and you're flying, let's say a 172 Papa or November or something like that, you're going to want to come down to the Cessna aircraft area and find your actual aircraft. Today I'm going to do a Sierra. We'll be fancy today. And once again, that's that's going to be kind of the case with any aircraft that you are, especially if you're GA and you're looking for like a Piper Warrior or an Archer or something like that. You want to make sure that you find the actual right aircraft, and a good indicator of that is looking for this W&B template available down here. Now, earlier when I talked about those ForeFlight labs, that's where you can go to make sure you have enhanced weight and balance turned on. So you want to make sure that's activated first. So we'll go ahead and hit this 172S Skyhawk. Now you've seen the aircraft type has been updated. We can go in and decide, obviously it's an airplane. We can look for the aircraft color and change that up if we want. We can put in our home airport. I'll put in what I did all my training in, San Marcos, Texas. We'll look at the airspeed units and length. These are going to be important as they're going to reflect either in the nav log or in the weight and balance, respectively. And so any changes that you make from here are going to have a direct result change in other features of the app down the line. So make sure you've got all this information correct. Now, we have to have a performance profile. Without the performance profile entered, we're not going to get any information. It's not going to be helpful at all. ForeFlight is a really smart calculator, right? It's not here to, tell you all of the things that you wish to know about the plane. You do have to do some of your own groundwork and make sure that the aircraft that you are creating has the right numbers put in so that ForeFlight can do its thing. So let's go ahead and put a performance profile in. I'll add a basic performance profile here, and we'll call it QWERTY plane. QWERTY plane. All right. So we'll look for the climb true airspeed. If I remember correctly, it's 74 knots indicated, so probably somewhere around like 76 knots. 76 knots true. Climb fuel per hour. Let's say it's about 12 gallons. This is don't take my word for all of this. I'm just kind of going off of the top of my head, but I'm merely putting this in for demonstrative purposes. Now you'll see these two areas that are highlighted in this kind of orange yellowish color. That's going to show you that this is required information and that you cannot really move forward with the aircraft profile without this information filled in. So cruise true airspeed. I'll say I'll oftentimes get like 120 knots on, depending on the day. And fuel per hour, I know the POH says 8, but depending on the age of your aircraft, you might want to set it a little bit higher. So let's say it's a 2005. We'll say it's 9. All right, we'll just make it a happy 9, and then we'll go to a descent true airspeed. Say that's about 120 as well. Descent fuel per hour, let's say it's about 6. And the descent rate, well, once again, say it's about 500 feet per minute. Okay, awesome. And at this point, we have created our first profile. I can go ahead and hit make default so that it'll automatically be chosen anytime I do a flight plan with it. And I'll hit back, QWERTY plane. Now, moving on down, we can see glide performance, glide ratio, the glide speed that you'll want it to be at. This is going to automatically populate depending on the aircraft that you choose. Your default cruise altitude and maximum ceiling. Let's go ahead and put in like 5,500. Let's say I'm flying a lot of VFR and this is kind of where I want it to start out. You'll look down and look at the weight units. This is where you can change your basic empty weight and all of your different weights. I recommend obviously choosing the correct basic empty weight. I'm going to leave it at 1663 because this is a fake airplane and that's as good as number as any. So, but if you do need to change it, just tap right on there and make your change. Underneath here, you'll see the add W&B profile. And again, if you have not turned on that enhanced weight and balance in the ForeFlight labs in your accounts section, you're not going to see this. So if you're not seeing this, I know we get questions about this every time. Go into more account, ForeFlight labs, and then turn on enhanced weight and balance. So you can go ahead and hit this. And once you do add W&B profile, as I said earlier, that those blue letters will come into handy later. You can go ahead and hit the 4-seat arrangement or a blank template. I highly recommend always using a template like the 4-seat arrangement, something that's already been built by us and has, been checked, double checked, triple checked based on the information from the POH or the OEM. We'll add that in. I'll just go ahead and use the same weight, and I'll go ahead and throw in, we'll say 39 inches, I think. That sounds about right? We look down here, and it's within our envelope. Everything kind of looks good. I'm not going to go too into detail with the weight and balance. I recommend you kind of play with it on your own, but you can, add stations if you need to add more seats. You can change up the envelope by editing it in this section here where the forward and aft CG limits are. You can check out where your basic empty weight lies on the envelope itself. And you can name this whatever you want to name it. Let's go ahead and go back at this point. And if you need any more help with weight and balance and set up resources, we will be showing that in a post-webinar email. So, Archer, you want to kind of take us through the maps section?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we are here on the Maps tab, and this is kind of the bread and butter of ForeFlight. This is the main tab you'll see when you open up the app, and I'm just going to go ahead and start up in the top left and just kind of move across those icons just to give an explanation of each. So in the top left here, we have what is called the layer selector. And so if I tap on this, you'll see down the left column, I have all the different charts that I'm able to turn on and overlay on top of the map. So you'll probably be familiar with the US VFR sectional and the IFR low. But one thing that is really unique to ForeFlight is our aeronautical layer. So I'll go ahead and turn this on. So this is a custom created layer here at ForeFlight where we basically distill all of the most essential information out of the VFR and IFR charts into a really beautiful and kind of easy to understand graphical layer that you can tap on any of the different elements that are on the map. So this is something that most pilots never turn off. While you're doing your VFR, you're working on your private pilot's license, some people will leave the sectional on, but once you're a little bit more advanced and you're kind of used to what you need out of the sectional, just using the aeronautical layer is something a lot of pilots do. So I'll close the layer selector for now just to give you a kind of idea of what kind of things that are on the aeronautical layer. What you're seeing in these little blue crosshairs are different airports. So I can tap on any of these different crosshairs and get a little panel on the right side with kind of any of the information I would need about this airport. This is also true for any of the airspaces and any smaller airports as well. What you might have noticed is that this kind of bar on the left side, I have these different filters that I can turn on to add or remove different layers from my aeronautical chart. So up at the top, you're seeing airports, we have airspace, waypoints, nav aids, terrain, roads, all kinds of stuff. So for me, I usually just leave the airspace, airports, terrain, and then highways on. But whatever works for you, that's a pretty easy place to configure it right there. So let me go back into the layer selector here and show you down this right column. So on the right, we have any kind of overlays that you might want to put on your map. So some that will probably stick out are radar or enhanced satellite. Like Alex mentioned earlier, we are on a Pro Plus plan. So there's some certain layers like icing, turbulence, cloud, and wind layers that will only come in Pro Plus and above. But most of the most essential layers are here in all of our plans. So just moving down this list, I could turn on radar or enhanced satellite. You'll notice that I have a time scrubber down on the bottom on a Pro Plus plan. Another really important layer is traffic. And so what you're seeing here is internet traffic. So this is intended for on-the-ground purposes to get an idea of the traffic in your area. This is not intended for in-flight use, but it is a really good way to kind of just get a general idea of how busy the airspace you might be flying in is. So looks like our Wi-Fi is a little slow. It's taking a second to download the traffic, but Jay has put up a screenshot here that shows you what this might look like. Cool. So moving down the list, you could turn on graphical NOTAMs or TFRs to get those overlaid right on top of the map. So you're seeing those start to pop up. This is a great way to kind of visualize any of these you might fly through on your flight plan. So there are a bunch of other great layers that I encourage you to kind of go through and turn on yourself. But one more I'd like to point out is the fuel prices. So this is super, super useful to just get a idea of what kind of airports you might want to stop at to grab fuel. And so in this case, I turned on 100 low lead, which is what I use in my planes. So you can see here in Austin, the fuel prices are pretty expensive, but as you get out of town a little bit, it definitely comes down. So this is a great layer that a lot of people will turn on when they're doing their flight planning. And I definitely encourage you to use it. So I think that's kind of all we'll cover in the layer selector for now. One thing you may have noticed is that when I tap on any of these different layers, the layer selector actually stays on the screen. But when you go into this, you might notice that as soon as you tap on a layer, this will collapse. And I will show you a setting in a moment how to keep that from happening. Just moving right across the top here, the next button you'll see is the FPL or Flight Plan Editor. And I won't go into too much detail on this because Alex is going to give you a much more detailed introduction to this, but this is basically a full tool to allow you to plan your flight straight from the maps page. So moving right along, I'll let Alex touch on that later. The next icon is a little settings icon, and some of these will kind of mirror what you saw in the overall app settings earlier, but some of them are a lot more map specific. So again, you see the screen brightness, you can invert your chart colors right from here. This is where you could also edit what kind of cultural elements you want on your map. So just to kind of clean up your map if you don't want some of these things. Another one is how you can actually configure the aeronautical layer. So, just what kind of airports you want to show on here, heliports or seaplane bases, you can configure right there. Quick filters were those kind of like aeronautical layer specific filters on the left side. So I like to keep those on just in case I want to turn something on or off. But if you know that you only want a certain set of layers on all the time, you can go ahead and just clean up your screen a little bit by turning that off. So there's a couple more things that are useful in here, such as the glide advisor, which I think Jay has a screenshot for. I'll give him a second to pull that up. But yeah, glide advisor can be turned on and off right through there in the map settings. This is a super great feature that is available to all plans. Is that correct, Jay? Yeah. Some other things in here are the own ship distance rings, which are a kind of configurable set of rings that will get drawn around your own ship. So you can see here, I have the default ones that are based on my zoom level. So you can see as I zoom out, these rings just showing me the different distances for my own ship. Those are really useful. Let me get back to where I was. Another great one is the extended center line. So Alex will show this off in a moment once we set up a flight plan, but this just gives you a really, really easy way to see the center lines of an airport as you're approaching. I think, the last thing I want to touch on in here is, like I mentioned a moment ago, about the multiple selections. So down here at the bottom, I have this on, but I'll turn it off just to show you what it does. If I turn off multiple selections and then go back over to the layer selector, you'll notice as soon as I turn off the traffic layer, the layer selector will collapse. And I prefer to have, the ability to select multiple layers at the same time. So I like to leave multiple selections on. So moving right along, next to the settings icon, you will see the synthetic vision icon. So this is there for all plans. Synthetic vision is... Yeah, right. Synthetic vision is for Pro Plus and up. This icon will be there showing just backup AHRs if you have basic. But this icon will be there nonetheless. But in our case, we have synthetic vision. This is a great feature that I think Jay will touch on a little bit later, but just to kind of explain what that is. Moving along, we have the instrument panel button. So if I tap this little dial here, it'll pull up my instrument panel. And this is a configurable set of instruments that you can have pretty much whatever information you could think of that's useful for your flying. So for example, if I'm not super interested in my nearest baro, I could just tap on that and find something that's more useful to me. So let's say I want to go to course next. I can just tap on that and that instrument will update right there for me. So you can go through and customize any of these that you would like. And then if you wanted to clean up your screen a little bit, you could just tap on that again. So moving right along, right next to that is the favorite and recent routes button. So if I tap, it'll bring up this little menu that'll show me any routes that I've favorited. So if there's a route that I fly all the time and I want to be able to easily load that into the flight plan, I can do it right from here in the favorite routes. Now let's say I was building out a route and it accidentally clicked clear, or I had flown one recently that I wanted to go back and favorite. I could find that right here in the recents, and this saves a long list of routes that I have just plugged into the flight plan editor in the past. So this is a great way to, find a route you flew before, or if you just accidentally cleared something out, you can always go into recent routes here and find that. So last thing I'll touch on is over here in the top right. This is kind of a universal search. So I could type in an airport or a waypoint and just right from here, tap into any of these different elements that I might want to find. So that's a really useful way. Just if you're trying to find something quickly, that's a good place to do it. And then the last thing is this little crosshair icon in the top right. This just recenters the view on my current position. So useful and small, but yeah, it definitely comes in handy quite a bit. So I think that's all I'm going to touch on the maps page for now. I'm going to hand it back over to Alex.
Awesome. Thanks, Archer. And one more thing about that little icon in the upper right corner. I just wanted to, if anybody is wondering if we have a moving map available, that is how you access the moving map. So as soon as you tap that, that will not just recenter on your aircraft or on your own ship, but it will follow your own ship as you're flying through. So it's a way to do navigation.
So when I was on this flight right here, when I took the screenshot with Glide Advisor we showed a minute ago, that's exactly what I had. I didn't have to touch anything. It was just following.
Yeah, it's really great. It works just like, a GPS would work on your panel. So super helpful. And I just wanted to make sure that was well understood really quick before we moved right along. So as we're on the map page still, I'll go ahead and talk about flight planning. Again, everybody has their own preferences and how we do this, but one way to do this is on the maps page. And that's the way I like to do it. I'm a more visual person. I like to see what I'm getting myself into before I go. So I'll go ahead and kind of walk you through the FPL menu here at the top of the maps page. So when I select this, you'll see this drop down come down that Archer mentioned earlier. This is going to be kind of our control center for basically any kind of planning that we're going to be doing here on the maps page. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a route. Let's say we want to go watch the Broncos up in Denver. So I'll go ahead and we'll start here in Austin, right? And all I have to do is just type in my identifier and then hit the space bar, and there you go. We've got our first point selected. Now there are a few different kind of ways to do this, but if you are typing it in, I want to make sure that you understand that you really need to put that first ICAO identifier in front of your airport. If you just type in AUS, it might actually pull up some random airport in the world because it's using what's called IATA data or IATA. It's like ICAO, but it's just a different format for basically labeling airports around the world. So you might find yourself in Santiago or somewhere in Israel or something like that, and you're like, what? This is in Texas. That's because you need to put that kilo in front of your identifier there. All right, enough on that. We'll go ahead and look at different ways we can go ahead and add to our route. So we can see that we have it entered in. Let's say we want to go up to Denver. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Come up here. I see KDEN because of my aeronautical display up here. And I see that it's a Bravo airspace. Let's go ahead and tap on that. And we can see here we have a few different options that pop up when you look on the right side of the screen. The first thing that's kind of nice about this is it brings up a miniaturized version of the airports tab here. So you can kind of get a very quick and thorough look at the different things you're working with. You can take a look at the weather, take a look at the TAF, see what's going to look like by the time you're going to be flying over in that direction. You can look at the different runways, what kind of runways it has there, how long, how wide, traffic pattern, whether or not it's a left or right closed traffic. And you can also look at the different procedures, your SIDS, stars, approaches. We've got other here. RNAV, DP, AAUP. I'm a flight instructor and I don't know what that is. So if anybody wants to throw that in the comments so I can be educated today, that would be awesome. You can also take a look at your NOTAMs, FBOs, comments, anything from this page. So it's actually really nice. Now, a lot of you will probably see 3D view, and that 3D view is going to be something that you can see on this page regardless of what your plan is. Now, if you don't have Performance Plus, which is the top tier plan, you won't actually be able to use it. You're just basically going to bring up an ad saying, hey, do you want to use this? Then go ahead and upgrade to Performance Plus. However, what that does is it basically shows a top-down view, and Jay will talk more about that later when he talks about performance plans. All right, anyway, so as we're looking at this, we see the option to either go direct to, we add it to route, full screen or hold. If we do direct to, that's going to take our current location, place a waypoint there, and then send it directly to this next waypoint that we're tapping on. So we want to just add this to our route. here.
Before you move on, I just looked up that AAUP page. In case you're curious, it's a attention all users page talking about simultaneous RNAV departures out of Denver. So
awesome.
The more you know.
You know what? I fly in these smaller podunk airports way too much. I would never see that until later in my career, I guess.
I got curious. Had to look it up.
Thank you for doing that. And sorry, everyone, for my ignorance. All right. Now, moving right along, we now see that we have both Austin and Denver entered into our flight plan. We can see that direct line moving through there. And then from here, we can decide to do some other things. We can tap on Denver, and we can choose to insert a waypoint before or after. I'm going to insert before, and let's just say KCOS here. We'll insert that. We see that it now changes from there. We could also kind of zoom in and do what we call rubber banding and actually grab a part of the route and pull it along for a ride over here. Tap that in, hit the more button, and then insert into route. Obviously, this is kind of, I have no idea what I'm doing at this point. This looks chaotic, but these are all options to you. Now, starting from the upper left, I'm going to go ahead and just go through what all these different boxes are, what they do, and what their purpose is. Obviously, we see our November QWERTY up here, so this is going to be our aircraft that we can choose. We can either choose it, or we can choose to edit it, or we can add an aircraft, but let's just go ahead and choose it for right now. Now down here we see QWERTY plane. This is going to be that performance profile we built at the very beginning of the webinar. So we'll go ahead and choose that. That's going to give us all of our calculations that we need for this flight. And down here we now see the altitude selector. I'm going to place it on VFR, and you know what? I'm just going to keep it at 6,000. Let's just keep it at 6,000 because I kind of want to show you guys something, even though we're flying VFR. I'm going to move from here down to the bottom right and then move upwards because I feel like that it's a better flow. So ETD, this is going to be, of course, our estimated time of departure. Let's say we're going to leave today at around 1640. That works. Let's do that. We'll now see at the bottom of our screen down here, all of our different calculations have been updated with the ETE, ETA, our fuel calculation, our wind. Now all these kind of calculations were able to populate because it needed a time to depart to know exactly what information it was going to be working with. Now, above that, we have the routes page. And routes is going to, it's really very helpful for IFR flight planning, because what this does is it's going to give you a lot of different routes that have been either cleared by ATC or have been, basically filed before, and it's just what it's going to do is it's going to lay out for you. All right, this is how long it's going to take. This is how much fuel you're going to use. And this is what type of flight plan you're on. So really, really helpful feature there. If you're into that, I'm going to go ahead, or interested in that, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And then procedure. Now this is my favorite part of the flight plan map. Mainly, I think it's fun to play around with. You can go ahead and go in here and choose an approach that you might want to go shoot while you're in flying into Denver. It'll tell you the best winds, whether a runway is closed. Let's say the ILS 25, and say we do it at the Ethel transition. If I add this to the route, it's going to add it to our actual flight plan within the map and overlay onto the map itself. Now you might see that this actual chart overlays over the map as well. That is only if you have Pro Plus or above. That's what's called the georeferencing feature, and it's very, very helpful. So if you're going for your instrument right now, or going to be flying a lot of IFR, I recommend Pro Plus, at least for this feature alone. I'm going to go ahead and just throw in a traffic pattern. I know we're flying into Denver. We're not going to be flying a traffic pattern, but I'm going to throw it in just so you can see it anyways. I'll throw it in for runway 25. And it'll tell you right now what's the best way to approach this traffic pattern How are you going to cross midfield, do a teardrop? Are you going to cross midfield, go direct? We can choose, and this is for right traffic, this is for left traffic. Obviously, it's going to be left traffic. Well, obviously, they're going to be vectoring you in the entire way because it's a Bravo airport and we're not doing a traffic pattern. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and check out what 45 looks like. We're going to add it to our route, and we'll now see that this has been updated with our new traffic pattern here. Really cool, especially if you're flying into somewhere that doesn't have a tower. Really, really helpful. All right. Now moving right along, you also have the ability, if you were to tap this icon here, it would basically reverse. I'm not going to tap it right now because I've already kind of thrown some waypoints in here, but it would essentially reverse your course, or you could hit clear to clear it all out. Down here at the bottom, I kind of spoke about all of these different calculations down here. Let's go ahead and talk about this icon right here. This icon is the same exact thing as 3D view, but this is going to be a 3D route. Once again, Jay will talk you through it later, but this is only for Performance Plus. This is going to be our pack feature. Pack is super helpful and highly recommended and encouraged that you use before every flight. What this feature does here is it's going to take any of the relevant information within a certain corridor around your flight, and you can see by looking at the sides of that corridor, any airport or weather or fuel prices, NOTAMs, comments that are captured within that corridor right there is going to be saved to be viewed later on your app. So I highly recommend you do this right before you leave for your flight so you have the most updated information. I'm not going to pack right now because it's going to take a while to download and I don't want to be sitting there staring at it. So we'll go ahead and exit out of that. What's up, Jay?
Something I heard, kind of recently was someone who doesn't keep a lot of charts downloaded onto their device. And instead what they'll do is they'll plan the night before and they'll pack once at home and then pack again at right before they're going to leave. So that way it's just getting weather updates and it's a faster download right before you fly.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You don't have to technically go into your downloads and download anything. If you use that pack feature, it's going to go ahead and download that information that's relevant for your flight. Now, what's our favorite thing in aviation? Redundancy, right? So as a CFI, but I highly recommend using the downloads. But if you really are on that big of a pinch and need to save space that much, as long as you remember to pack before every flight, you'll have all of that relevant information for your flight, no matter what. All right, moving on. The star icon here, Archer touched on it, the recents and favorites. The star icon is simply going to save as a favorite. I'll go ahead and say Denver flight and save that. And we can now see that it is saved under our favorites as Denver flight. There we go. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about on the flight plan is going to be our nav log. Now, this is going to be an abbreviated nav log. This isn't going to be what you're used to seeing, like your those like Jeppesen nav logs that you were filling out through your flight training or any of the ICAO stuff. This is just going to be a much more condensed version for this page that basically tells you your totals, your fuel, time, total leg, all of that stuff for each leg of your journey. So you can go through here. You can tap on each arrow. You can choose to go direct or fly that leg and change where you are in your flight plan. I'm going to hit cancel there. But super cool feature. Check it out. Might be helpful for building a flight plan and realizing, hey, maybe this leg might be a little bit too long, too long that I'm not really comfortable with it, right? Now, last thing I'm going to mention really quick here is the profile view. This is my favorite view. I know I said procedures, but this is actually my favorite. Don't listen to past Alex, listen to present Alex. Profile view is awesome. Now, this is for Pro Plus and above, right? And the reason I picked Denver today was I wanted to highlight to you why this is such a powerful feature. Now, what this is going to do is going to give you a profile view of your entire flight. So what's the most important part about a profile view is it's going to be giving it to you vertically, right? You're going to be getting the vertical portion of your flight versus just the lateral portion. So you can see here, you start out your flight, you can widen this and really zoom in on each of the portions of your flight. You can check out different things like airspaces, and we can see the inner core of our Austin Class Charlie airspace. We can look at the outer core. We can check out different things like MOAs in the areas. And oh, what's this? I passed through this along my flight. You know what? We've got another MOA that we actually kind of pop through. So we might choose to, I'm just going to go around that because I don't even want to mess with it. And now it's gone, right? Super cool. Good way to keep a good situational awareness about your flight. And as we move right along, we see that the terrain is moving up and up and up as it does. You can check out different things. We're going to pass through Amarillo. It goes up to 7,600. That might be something that we want to dodge either to the left or the right. So let's go ahead and do that. Why not? We're here. Insert that in the route, and it's gone. We can kind of keep looking. And as we get closer and closer to Colorado, we start noticing, we can pass through those MOAs, that's fine, that all of a sudden our terrain starts to turn red. Now, obviously what this means at this point, we see these little explosions here that we have made a bad decision. We have not either chosen the correct route laterally or vertically. So then we can kind of zoom in on this area here, right? Let's take a look. We can see where our red dot is. And we can see, okay, around this area is where we start running into trouble. So what I'm going to do, if you have Pro Plus, you already have profile view. Let's look at the hazard view or hazard advisor. Now, what I can do from here is I can take it down to my planned flight, and I can see clearly 6,000 feet just ain't going to do it, right? So I can either choose to go way out of my way over here to the east and then pop in from that direction, or I can choose to, and I'm just going to cancel that, increase my altitude. And each time I increase my altitude, I start looking, okay, where am I going to be safe? 10,500 looks pretty safe from here. So now I can go back into my flight plan view, change it up to 10,500. If you see that since I changed that within my hazard view, it actually changed on my profile view. Notice that? Awesome. Go ahead and change that here. Go back to edit. Go in. Find VFR 10,500. And boom. Now, of course, people are saying Cessna 172, 10,500. It'll take you about 3 hours to get up there. That's fine. It's an S model. Should be good. It's got a climb prop. But at that point, we can make sure that our journey is going to be safe. It's going to be clear of any obstacles or obstructions, terrain. And we're steering clear of any airspace we don't want to get into. All right. I think that's what I've got for this. One more thing. Before I send you over to Archer, I'm going to send this over to what Archer talks about. So this send to button right here, you probably notice it from everything today. How to send web pages or different apps to your friends. You can send this flight plan as a FPL file. It's a proprietary file that we have either through mail. You can send it to your plates. If you send it to your plates here, it'll just bring up your Austin plates and your Denver plates, or you can send it directly to your flights tab. And from there, I'm going to hand it off to Archer.
Awesome. So through the magic of sync at ForeFlight, which is the team I work on, between both Alex and my iPad, that flight that he just plugged in is now synced right over to the flights page. And so, a lot of the features between the flight plan editor and the flights page are pretty similar, but there are a few things on the flights page that a lot of people don't know about that I think make it a really compelling way to plan your flight. So across the top here, you probably notice a lot of the same information that Alex was showing a moment ago. That same navlog is there in the next section down. But something that is unique to the flight page is the briefing. So if I tap into this will generate a kind of holistic briefing of my whole flight. And so this will pull all of the weather, NOTAMs, TFRs, any of that stuff that I'm going to fly through. It's taking a second here, but this is a feature that is only available in the US. But it's just a really, really easy way to see all the components of your flight. This is taking quite a moment to download, so... Oh.
I think this room's Wi-Fi might be not the greatest,
Yeah.
so apologies for that.
Well, here we are. So what you're seeing in this left panel is kind of just all the different sections. So if you wanted to jump directly to, let's say, synopsis, you could tap on that and it would show you your surface analysis chart. So I'll just start from the top in adverse conditions. So it's going to show you any TFRs you're going to fly through, any unsafe or closed areas, some convective sigmets. But again, this is just an easy way to kind of tab through and see all the different things that you're going to fly through. So once again, this is a feature only available in the United States, but really, really great. And if you're not seeing this for whatever reason, you can go into more settings and then type briefing into that filter bar I showed earlier, and then you'll see a section called graphical. And so you'll tap on briefing format and then select graphical. All right, so going back to the flights page, I won't go into too much of this because this is pretty much all the same information Alex was showing earlier. Here's that same kind of route editor that he showed when he tapped on routes. But just moving right along, the same pack button is there as well. The major feature of the flight page over the flight plan editor is the ability to file your flight. And so if I was a VFR pilot, I might not do this too much, but you do have the option to file it here. But more importantly, for IFR pilots, being able to file your flight plan right from ForeFlight is an amazing feature. So I'll just show you what this file window looks like. You'll tap Proceed to File. You'll make sure all of your information is correct with the right aircraft, your departure, any of the information that you might have edited there. And basically, once you're ready to go, you'll just tap File. And that's all you'll need to do to file your flight plan. So you'll get an email back confirming that your flight plan was approved by ATC, and any changes will be reflected right here in the flights page. So I think that's all I have to show off here on the flights page. The last thing I will show is just like you can send it from the map to the flights page, you can send it from the flights page to the map. So if I made some changes here, or if I got my changes back from ATC, I could send this right back over to the map. And then you'll see it just put this right on my maps page. So I think that's all I have on maps. I'll pass it back over to Alex to talk to you about in-flight features.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Archer. All right. So now we're flying the plane. We've done all our planning. We're ready to go fly. What's the first thing we break open? If we're good pilots, it's our checklist, right? So we'll go over to here on the our checklist. I moved it. I forgot at the very beginning of the webinar. I moved it right to the front. Past Alex was looking out for future Alex. Okay, so I can go ahead and tap my checklist, and you see I've got some checklists already kind of created in here. Now, if you want to create one for your aircraft, hit the plus button and go ahead and look for your individual aircraft. You can try typing it in on the filter. I'm just going to go ahead and stick with what we've already got built in here because these are the ones I kind of wanted to talk to you about today. So first, let's take a look at our 172 that we built earlier. Now we can see normal, abnormal, and emergency. These are going to be our big different groups of checklist items. If we see normal, of course, we see all the normal things like pre-flight, in-flight, shutting down, post-flight, all the good stuff like that. Looking at our abnormal, we don't have abnormal for the 172S because it's a 172. But if we go over to emergency, we can see all sorts of different things like our engine failure during takeoff, engine failure immediately after, maybe engine failure during flight. This is something that I think is really helpful. This is what I tell my students to do whenever you're doing your takeoff briefing before you fly. Just pop over to the checklist and talk about these things that you're going to do. If I have an engine failure during takeoff roll, I'll take my throttle to idle. I'll apply my brakes. I'll retract my flaps if I have them on or have them down. I'll cut off my mixture, turn my ignition switch to off, and I will turn my master switch off and get off the runway immediately after takeoff, and then just go from there. I think it's a great thing, great way for you to have one less thing to have to try to memorize while you're already stressed out about a check ride, right? Or, stressed out about your flight. So really cool feature, I think. Back to normal, a couple things we can do. Obviously for something like an emergency, we don't want to necessarily be staring down at our iPad, right? So let's say we have an engine failure during flight. We can go ahead and choose the speak icon, and it will speak out each one of these list items for you, so that you can just go through and actually accomplish the items while the iPad is telling you what to do. It's like having a co-pilot there or a first officer there while you're trying to get yourself safe. Now moving on. Well, before I move on, sorry, go back really quick. We do have some other non-aircraft checklists that are pretty nice. Passenger briefs going to basically take you through safety. Your EFB pre-flight, I recommend this because obviously you don't want to be up in the air and realize you have old data or realize you don't have access to your iPad because it's going to not be charged or something like that. So I always recommend this be a part of your pre-flight as well as pre-flighting your aircraft. If you're going to be using an EFB, you wouldn't want to fly with paper charts that are out of date. So don't let your EFB be out of date either. And we've also got the I'm Safe checklist. This can just be a good second check on our own psyche and our own physical and mental health to make sure that we are good to fly that day. Which is incredibly important. All right, moving on. Next, we'll go from the checklist, get ourselves all pre-flighted, get in the aircraft, start taxiing. And what I'll mention here really quick is with Pro Plus, you have what's called a georeferenceable plates. Now, I'm not going to be able to show this to you today purely because we're not at an airport. But if we were, our own ship would show up on these plates within the plates feature, which is super nice when we have an airport diagram open and very convoluted taxiways. We can just follow along with the own ship instead of having to look around and guess on our own. It's very helpful for an additional situational awareness. Of course, you want to keep your eyes outside of the aircraft at all times, but there's nothing saying that you can't take a quick peek just to make sure you're on the right path, right? All right, moving right along. Once, let's say we get done pre-flighting, we're just getting ready to go. Next, we have to go ahead and take down. I'll just clear all that out. Take down our clearance. So we have a bunch of different templates we can use for our scratch pads. And our scratch pads are great. I mean, they're just a way to not have to carry an extra pad of paper with you and a pen, right? So you can, go in. We of course have the whole craft scratch pad, so you can, I'm cleared to Denver, as filed, altitude 10,000. Or probably going to be higher than that. Frequency 119.0 and transponder 4, 5, 6, 7. Right. This is just a way that we can quickly have this and available to us. We don't have to have a whole bunch of extra stuff in our laps. It just makes it really easy. So now that we're ready to go, we've got our clearance. We've done our run up. We're about to take off. Let's go back over to the maps page. So what map features do you guys really fly with? I typically fly with a few different ones. Airspace alerts, the destination weather frequency alerts. I think we have some slides that kind of show those, right, Jay?
Yeah, here's the destination weather frequency alert.
Perfect.
And then let's see. Yeah, we've also got airspace alerts here as well.
That's awesome. And you could see on that previous slide, can you go back to that one really quick, Jay? That's what your synthetic vision is going to look like if you have Pro Plus and you have a reliable GPS with AHRS data available. It's really cool. I love that feature because not only does it show you your terrain around you and the airports coming up, but it's really helpful as a traffic spotter. If you have good TSB information, it will show you on the on your screen where the traffic should be in the sky. I don't know about you, but even with completely correctable lenses and everything, some days it's just impossible to find traffic around you. So great feature, highly recommend. Once again, Pro Plus only. We talked about the extended center lines earlier. I just kind of want to show you what those look like. Let's take a look down here. Since this is a part of my flight plan and I have them turned on, you can see up here 17 left, 17 right. Sorry. This is just going, these black lines that are extending from, this is just going to show you where to line up and whether or not you are on that center line or not. So really helpful, great for situational awareness. That I love those. Archer already showed you the distance rings, but I'll use those as well, along with the glide advisor. And I like to look at my different SUAs, like parachute jump areas, right? So you can see right here, I guess Fremont County has a PJA. And you can see here the lower limit, upper limit, it's a parachute jump area. It's probably going to 17.5 almost always. But you can also kind of tell, different hours, dailies. From this one, it looks like it's 6 to midnight.
And can you show us how you got to this with the tap hold on the screen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was a little quick. So you can tap and then hold. That'll bring up your add to route menu here on the right. And then you can kind of just look for what you want to take a gander at. So if I were to hit this top one, obviously that's not what I'm looking for. This is going to bring up the FUR for the Denver area. Same with this. So once I tap on the PJA, I recognize that it's filling up the area that I'm interested in, and I can now look at the details for that. One more thing that I want to kind of bring up is Archer brought them up earlier, but the NOTAMs and TFRs, TFRs freak me out. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I always keep those on. And if you have a good ADSB, such as like a Sentry or something like that, to have the ability to keep an eye out for those, I always, as a CFI, I highly recommend you keep those on. Now let's kind of talk about the Sentry really quick. The Sentry, what it uses is ADSB. Now, just because we make the Sentry doesn't mean that that's the only ADSB provider that you can use. There's plenty of ADSB providers you can use to be able to get this information. And what it does is it provides in-flight traffic and weather situational awareness. And it works a little different inside and outside the United States. In the United States, it's transmitted by the aircraft and ground towers. So either aircraft to aircraft or aircraft to ground. And outside the United States, it's only aircraft to aircraft. So that means that your weather is only going to be provided within the United States, because otherwise you have no source for that information. Now, there's a difference between what's called TSB and FSB. FSB is going to be your ADSB weather, and from that you can get NEXRAD, which is going to be your radar, METARs, TAFs, AirMets, SIGMETs, CWAs. You can get your PIREPs, your SUAs, or special use airspaces, NOTAMs, cloud tops, icing, lightning, turbulence, winds, and temperatures aloft, and freezing levels. So a lot of great information to keep you situationally aware while you fly. One thing I do want to mention about ADSB, even though you have NEXRAD, that does not mean you should use it to try to dodge thunderstorms. So just want to make sure this is situational awareness only. This is not navigational tactics. So, all right, let's go ahead and talk about post-flight.
Awesome. So I'm going to take you through two of the great post-flight features we have here in ForeFlight, starting off with track logs. So I'm not sure if Alex mentioned this earlier, but along the menu across the bottom here, this far right slot will be your most recently accessed tab from the More menu. So in my case, I went to More and tapped track logs most recently, and so it's going to go ahead and keep that in that slot for me. But for example, if I went over here and chose logbook instead, you'll see now that switches over to logbook. But we'll start with track logs. So across the left side here, this is our whole list of all the different track logs sorted by what month we flew them in. You can see some other information about how many hours we flew total and what the source of the track log was. So the one that I'm looking at in particular at the bottom was recorded with a Sentry Plus, which has a great G meter built into it. So I'll show you that here in a moment. But looking on this right side, what you're seeing up at the top here is that same kind of map view that you saw with our aeronautical layer, with your actual track overlaid right on top of it. Right under that, you'll see, similar to the profile view, your whole route that you flew along your flight with your different altitude and speed in this case. But like the layer selector on the map, I could tap on that here and pick something else. So in my case, I want to see what my G load was across this flight. from my Sentry Plus, I'll go ahead and tap that, and you'll see it's now overlaid this pink line showing me my Gs. So wasn't doing any crazy aerobatic maneuvers on this flight, but if I was, this is a really cool way to see it. Across the bottom, you'll see your scrubber, which you can go ahead and kind of track along your flight, so you're seeing my speed and G load along the way. But let's say there was an extended taxi period at the beginning or the end of my flight. I could tap on this edit button in the bottom right, and this will pull up a editor that allows me to kind of chop the beginning or end off of my track log, very similar to any kind of video editing software you may have used.
And I will say on this particular flight, this was one of my flights as a student pilot, there was a plane that landed and had a flat tire blocking, neither runway was usable at that point. So we had a long taxi time.
Right. So right at the beginning here, you can see Jay has gone ahead and edited off a lot of this taxi time. So, it's just showing the most relevant information in this track. And you can see there's this little line that's following along my track to show me what I've edited. So if I zoom in here at the beginning, you can see there's kind of a bunch of, just waiting around that's happening here at the beginning. So Jay's gone ahead and just chopped all that off to just the most relevant parts of the flight. So track logs are really, really cool. And in ForeFlight, these are recorded by default. So based on a couple factors, we'll go ahead and automatically turn on track log recording by default. But there are a couple settings that I'll show you real quick to kind of configure that for your liking. So if we go into More and Settings and type in Track or Track Log, you'll see there's a couple settings here under track log. The first one being Enable Auto Start-Stop Control, which is what I just mentioned a moment ago about the track log's automatically starting and stopping based on a couple factors like your ground speed and altitude. So I like to have that on just in case I forget. Some people will add a check to their checklist to turn on track log recording if they don't want to have that automatically done for them. The setting right above that, Enable Start-Stop Control, is a button on the map page, which I will show you, that just allows you to manually start and stop that. So if I close this out and go back over to Maps, this little REC button here on the left side allows me to start and stop my track log recording right from the Maps page. So just finishing up on the track logs page, if this looked good to me, I kind of trimmed off the parts that I wasn't interested in, I could go ahead and send this over with that same Send To button up in the top right that we'll see throughout the app, and I'm going to send this over to my logbook. So this will automatically generate a logbook entry for me based on the track log. So from the amount of time and the origin and destination that I flew, I can go ahead and automatically fill in a lot of this logbook information just from the track log. So I'll go ahead and pick my aircraft. Let's do, we have a couple in here. We'll just do this one. And this will fill in, the aircraft I flew. And then if I want to go ahead and edit any of the HOBs or tack time, I could do that right here. I could also add how many landings, how much time I spent, PIC or SIC, whether it was across country or not. This just allows you to update all of your currencies just right in this logbook entry. Something else that is great is if I had done some kind of training on this flight, I could have an instructor sign this right on my ForeFlight logbook. So if I tap Add Instructor Signature, I can have them sign the logbook right then and there, which doesn't, require any kind of internet connection or anything. Or I can do request signature, which will send an email to them, and they can sign this logbook entry remotely. So if you forgot to do it, or just down the line, if you want to have them sign your logbook, you can do that via email. So there are a few more things you can add on here if you wanted to add a photo or anyone that was with you, or if you wanted to add some comments about whether you had some things you wanted to improve on, you could do that here. Or you could tap Add Next Entry if you had a couple of different entries you wanted to add sequentially. Another thing I'll note about the track logs is that you don't actually have to manually send them from the track logs page over to logbook. They'll show up here in this drafts and requests section. So if I go and fly a flight, which I generate a track log from, and go over to logbook, I'll see that track log right up in the top in drafts and requests, and I can go ahead and just tap on any of these and just generate my logbook entry. So you can see down here at the very bottom, that's that flight I was just showing you. I can generate that same logbook entry right from there. So I think that's all I'm going to show here on the logbook page. I'm going to pass it over to Jay to finish up.
Yeah, thanks, Archer. Appreciate it. So next, we're going to be talking about some of the features that are available in our higher subscription plans. So here you can see we're talking about in green. When you see this green bug, we'll be talking about plans that are in Pro or Performance Plus. And then when you see the blue bug here, we're talking about features only available in Performance Plus. So, but to start off on the left side here, Pro Plus adds safety enhancing terrain and situational awareness features, as we've already seen some of. It also includes advanced weather forecast layers and must-have features for IFR flying. And then Performance Plans include even more advanced forecast visualizations, 3D airport and route familiarization, integrated weight and balance planning, and takeoff and landing distances. Now, we've talked a lot about these 3 different subscription plans. So before I get into these features, I do want to mention that you can find all the information, all of the information you can need and more about which features are included in which plans at foreflight.com/pricing. And all the links we mentioned today, by the way, are going to be included in an email that you get after this webinar. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these features here. The first one that we're talking about here is one that's actually pretty new, ADS-B traffic breadcrumbs. What this is when you're flying in ForeFlight, you can see your track. If you have breadcrumbs enabled, you can see those with a green line. Well, this feature, ADS-B traffic breadcrumbs, kind of takes that a step further. And now you can see where aircraft that you have, that you are in range of with your ADS-B device, whether it's a Sentry or something else, you can see where they have been. So in this case, I'm seeing this plane take off from Taylor, which is just outside of Austin. And you can see that they've been in the pattern for quite a while. But, after this plane took off, actually, right after I took this screenshot, they ended up going back to Georgetown, which is, 8 miles to the northwest. So it just helps you be aware of how many people are in the pattern and just what's going on in the area. The next feature we'll talk about is synthetic vision. We've talked a lot about it. Alex mentioned the traffic alerts that you can get using it. This is on that same flight we were showing Glide Advisor earlier, but we were coming back into Scottsdale at this point. And if you've ever flown in the Phoenix area, you know that airspace is incredibly busy. So we got an alert like this several times during the flight, and it was really nice to have great situational awareness. And you can see the little red arrow kind of on the left side there at our 10 o'clock, just like the alert says, I guess. That's really helpful to have as well. The georeference plates and airport diagrams, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. You said that this is the reason alone that you, before you even worked at ForeFlight, you had Pro Plus from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and honestly, I kind of cheated. I had Performance Plus pretty early, but Pro Plus was not only for this, but, especially if you are a student pilot and you're trying to figure out, you're trying your hardest just to stay on the center line while you're taxiing. Having that additional georeferenceable airport diagram where you can draw your line and actually show where you're going, and so that you can just follow along and not have to think too hard outside of left, right, brake, nope, too much brake. That really, really becomes helpful in being a situational awareness tool.
Absolutely. Yeah. This departure chart, Jeppesen chart, isn't exactly the best example for, anyone who's a new pilot, but it's the same thing. Any chart, FAA, Jeppesen, almost any of them that can be georeferenced in ForeFlight are georeferenced in ForeFlight. And you can find them on the Maps tab. The next one, you also saw this feature a few minutes ago with Hazard Advisor. This flight you can see from Aspen down to Montrose. We were able to figure out a route at 10,000 feet that avoids terrain, but is close to terrain. So we wanted to see kind of what kind of terrain we're going to encounter. You can also see that shaded area on either side of our route. Now that's called the profile corridor, or just the corridor of your route. And this is a part of both Hazard Advisor and the next feature I'm going to show you, which is Profile View. So you can see here this flight from Houston Executive out to Lufkin here. You can see that corridor is there. So when we're talking about, I'm going to go back one slide to Hazard Advisor, you can see that it puts little icons on the highest points of terrain within that corridor, just to show you where your highest points are going to be within the couple miles of you. Whenever it comes to your profile view, it's going to be the same thing. Now, when we're talking about the Houston area, we're not talking about super high terrain. We're talking about towers, things like that. So it's really helpful. You can also see at the top in that profile view, we are flying at multiple altitudes. So you can, I was talking to a guy at Oshkosh last year that he lives on the south side of Chicago, regularly went up into Wisconsin to visit family, and he didn't know that profile view could help you plan your flight by leg. You can change your altitude by leg within it just to help you plan in that way. So next we're going to jump into features that are only available in Performance Plus. And the first one here is dynamic winds. This is a great visualization of winds. Not only here, you can see at Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh. You can see the winds at any altitude, or at least within a couple thousand feet of where you are. And it's not just at your airport, it's anywhere in the world. So in just a second, this video is going to zoom out and you'll be able to see the visualization that you get. So this is looking at wind speeds. So you can see in the flight levels, west to east, really strong winds there. There's also a layer that shows them with temperatures, and you can see where it's warmer, where it's cooler. Really great map layer to have. 3D airports and routes. So this is coming into Aspen. You can see several things in this screenshot here. So number one, you can see that little pink icon on the right side. When you're looking in 3D before a flight, you can see, oh, hey, this is where this other airport is. Just to know where you are, just to have that situational awareness. And then in the background, you can see the little yellow and red icons. Those are indicating obstacles. So whether that's radio towers, whether that's, if you're flying near a major metropolitan area with buildings, that is all included in 3D airports and routes. Something else that's included, we talked about profile view a minute ago. Something else is that you can get forecast weather in both 3D and profile view. So you can see here, it shows us climbing through 10,600 feet. And we're about to encounter some icing. So you can show icing, turbulence, and clouds with these. Really great, really helpful things to have. The last slide I have here is showing, and this kind of answers a question that we got a little bit ago, asking why, okay, when I was setting up my 172, why do I have 10 cruise profiles? And the reason is that we have multiple performance profiles based on data that we've gotten from Textron, from your manufacturer, that let us create these different performance profiles for your aircraft. So instead of having to go in and set one up manually, you can go ahead and fly with one of these since they are from your manufacturer. One other one I don't have a slide for, but I do want to show you here. So I'm going to pull up my iPad. Is, let's say I want to go flying today from Georgetown to this town in Arkansas that I've got some family in. So you can see there's some weather out west, and Alex, I think it was Alex that mentioned the route advisor earlier. I'm logged into a Performance Plus account, so our highest subscription plan. And something that you get with that, on top of looking at the ATC cleared routes, is you also get the recommended route. Now, the recommended route looks at what's currently being cleared from ATC. It's also just taking in all these calculations to help get you a route that is more likely to be cleared as filed. So another great feature. I just didn't have a screenshot for it. So that kind of wraps up our look at higher subscription plans, Pro and Performance. Again, you can go to foreflight.com/pricing to see where whatever feature you're interested in, where that lands within those. But yeah, all right. So Alex and Archer, I want to go ahead and open it up. We're kind of to the portion of the webinar. We'll take some questions in a few minutes, but I also want to see if you guys just have any tips and tricks for anyone. Either you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I can go ahead and start. First of all, I just want to say I really appreciate all the support for this webinar given to us. All the guys that are answering your questions as we are going along in this webinar. Chris, Drew, Jeremy, Steve, and Kendall. They've been absolutely crushing it, answering all your guys' questions. So, I really want to give a huge thank you to those guys. First of all, I've got one of my tips and or tricks that I really enjoy is, oh man, I put myself on the spot here. Well, one thing we can do is anywhere on the map where we just tap and hold, we can hit this WX button, and that's just going to bring up the daily weather forecast for that area, no matter where it is. It's really cool. If you're like, well, I'm going to be in Seattle next week, and I just kind of want to see what it's going to be like in that area, you can just kind of tap, and there we go. Pulls up your daily forecast.
Can I add on to that a little bit?
Sure.
So whenever you are logged out of ForeFlight and ignore the other apps on here, I've got ForeFlight here at the top left. If you tap hold on it, and just click local forecast, no matter where you are, whether, let's say you're in Seattle and you've already traveled there, you don't have to type in an airport identifier at all. You can open the local forecast
Absolutely, yeah, and like you could also notice from that same picture, you can also tap in the nearest airport to you if you just happen to be wandering around. You have your iPhone on you. You want to check out what airport is closest, and maybe go see a couple planes. So very cool.
Awesome, Alex. You got any others, or you want to hand it over to Archer?
I'll go ahead and hand it over.
All right.
Yeah, I got a quick one we can show. So if we go up into this map settings again up here at the top, and I scroll down to airspace, I can actually filter out airspace above a certain flight level. So for me, I'm a VFR pilot, probably won't be above 12,000 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 12,000, and you'll notice that a couple of these special airspaces turn off. They're only in use above 12,000 feet. So that's just a small thing, but if you're never going to go above a certain flight level and you want to clear up your map a little bit, that's one more way to do it.
Definitely. Awesome. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember if we talked about this earlier. Did we talk about the documents folder? Because I was going to just mention this as a quick tip.
No. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to show it to you guys really quick. So if you look down here at the documents tab, and then you see this ForeFlight drive right there, and ignore all the other drives. We've got several on our iPad since we're helping customers all over. But when you open that folder, you'll see this list of all of these different guides. We've got the pilot's guide, and I'll give you a link to that in just a second if you want to look at it on your computer. We also got the filing guide, the logbook guide, the legends guide, and if we scroll down, we've even got the new ForeFlight watch app guide. So whenever you go into one of these guides, let's say you're in the pilot's guide, and when I was creating that slide to show what types of weather information you can get through ADSB, through FISB, I came in here and actually just typed in ADSB, and it pulled up and said, okay, it pulls up all of the mentions of it within the pilot's guide. So let's say I'm looking at ADSB weather. Okay, well, that actually takes me to the table of contents at the beginning, but that's fine. We can just tap on one of those pages and it'll take us right to that information. So it's incredibly helpful, especially since the pilot's guide is packed with all the information and more that you could ever need to know about ForeFlight. It's really helpful to use that search function. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into just a few links here that can be really helpful for you, and then we'll ask a couple of questions to wrap things up. So first, foreflight.com/support or support.foreflight.com takes you to the same place. We've got lots of great support resources there. You can find thousands of articles written by our support team that can answer just about any question you have if you can't find it in the pilot's guide or somewhere else. The second link here, like I just mentioned, the pilot's guide, foreflight.com/pilots-guide. Again, or you can find it in the documents tab within ForeFlight, has the answer to just about anything you might need. You can also register for more webinars and watch past ones at foreflight.com/webinars. And you can also reach out to the pilot support team, whether your question is answered today or it's not, or you have another question that comes up later, whatever it is, we're always happy to help. And just make sure and say all the questions should go to Alex when you do that.
Yeah, give me more work, folks.
Absolutely. He needs it.
Trying to make my paycheck.
There you go. So I actually want to ask both of you this, and I think I sent you a message while we were talking here. We got a question about somebody who was wondering whether they should use Zulu time or local time when they're planning their departure. I'm just curious, what do you guys use and why?
I use local. I use local because I'm not doing any kind of international flying, honestly. You could use Zulu. I would say, there's a good middle ground where if you're doing a lot of IFR flying, right now you're going to have to be talking in Zulu terms, especially when you're filing with ATC and everything. So, but for me personally, when I'm doing instruction, either primary or commercial or even IFR, I typically will always use local.
Yeah, I just set to Zulu a long time ago. I'm a software engineer, so I'm looking at it all day anyways. So yeah, it's what I'm used to. Absolutely.
Totally understand that. It's like the debate between 12-hour clock and 24-hour clock too. Right. Like it's personal preference. It's going to get you where you need to go either way. Alex, the next question I have is for you. Can you talk about where, if you're looking on the map, let's say you're planning a route, you want to find what frequencies are most likely to be used while you're flying?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several ways to do this. And here's what I'm going to say. it really depends on the type of flying, and I know that's probably just kind of an annoying thing to hear over and over, but if you are flying VFR or IFR, a part of that flight planning is kind of digging in, finding those different frequencies at the local airport. So if you're doing some, let's say, VFR flight planning, the main thing you're going to be wanting to do is kind of tapping these little local airports around here and finding the CTAF, right? I mean, I know I don't really need to say that. It's probably an annoying thing to hear, but it's definitely a good way to get the first part of your information. Secondly, if you look within this menu over here, I guess we're in Burn It. Didn't even mean to tap on that, but great tail wheel flying out there, and I think they're bringing some seaplane flying out there if anybody's interested. Anyways,
Oh, that's awesome.
You can also look and see what center frequency is going to be used around this area. So that's always what I'll do if I'm near whatever airport I'm close by. I'll just kind of tap on that airport and take a look at the frequencies and see, okay, what flight service frequencies am I going to be using? What's the CTAF? And furthermore, if I want to talk to ATC, what's the center frequency for that airport? Another thing you can do, if you have this aeronautical, map layer displayed, tap on this squiggly line over here for the different quick filters, and you'll see up here. Let's say you're coming into Austin. If you're coming from the northwest, you're going to want to tune in to 127.72 as you're coming in. But if you're coming from a different area, normally it would display.
There's one a little farther east, I think, that was displaying.
One a little bit further east.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you can see this is going to probably be Houston Center out here. Houston College Station 134.8. So I guess that's Houston approach. So it'll normally give you, like, depending on the direction you're coming from, you'll be able to see different frequencies and know who you're contacting. Usually the top is going to be the controlling center. The middle is going to be the approach, or who you're actually contacting. One more final way of doing this: if you tap and hold in the area, take a look at the Houston either FIR or UIR, depending on if you're a low level or high level. Let's say we're low level. You can go into communication details and you can kind of look through this list. And this is going to tell you, let's say you're in the Houston Center, but you're around Austin. You're either going to be tuning into 127.72, 132.15, or one of those frequencies for center. So super helpful there. Definitely something to kind of look through. And again, it's going to take work on your part as well as the PIC to go through, recognize all of these different frequencies and write them down and make sure you have access to them when the time comes.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, just a couple more here that I'll just answer super quickly. So we got a question about the guides asking what the boxes mean on the left side of the maps tab. Like you can see what Alex has here on his iPad that I just left up. You can find more about that in the pilot's guide. And then one other one that also came to mind was you see all the different airport icons, you see the crosses, you see the different colors. So I wanted to also point you to the Legends guide. This is just page 7 of the Legends guide. You can see whether they have, with or without a tower, whether they have services on site or not. There are a lot of different things, a lot of different symbology that you can learn. Something else that you can learn farther down is what the different intensities are for turbulence or on the radar, different things like that. So very, very helpful resources there. The last one I'll answer on the documents tab is related to someone who works for an organization that has what we call cloud documents. Now that is where you can upload files to a service like Dropbox or OneDrive or Box, and they can be installed on your iPad. Or they can be synced to your iPad, So if we go into this cloud documents drive, now this is available for all individual customers, but if you are a business customer, you have to be on business performance for this feature. But you can see here these cloud documents. I put these in my Dropbox account over a year ago. I've kind of just left it there, but these have been synced to my device ever since. So really helpful, especially if you are part of a flight school, maybe you want to put, Alex, what are some of the documents you might put there for students?
Oh, I mean, anything from your POH, maybe your flight school's SOPs, maybe different custom content like maps of practice areas or things to look out for, like obstacles, big towers that have caused issues in the past, or great places to do different types of maneuvers. So all sorts of things you can put in there, and really great for helping keep all of your documents organized in the same place.
Absolutely. So I'm going to do one thing here I wasn't planning on, but since you mentioned custom content layers, I just want to show an example of what that looks like. This is from a group, the Arizona Flight Training Work Group, I think is what they're called. And they put out this map that's used by all the flight schools, as I understand it, in the Phoenix area. And so they all are working off the same visual reporting points, and going to the same practice areas, just to have consistency and help increase the situational awareness for all of them in flight. So just wanted to show that. It's a great group. They also, there are groups all around the country that can do this exact same thing. So with that, that wraps up today's webinar. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the pilot support team at team@foreflight.com. And with that, thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you on the next webinar.